Blessed be the reading of your word, Heavenly Father. Genesis chapter 41. Let's eat. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. So he was in jail for 2 years. That's what he says. That's what it says here. Not 12, 2. He was in prison 2 years for a false accusation. And that's way too many days, too long. He didn't do nothing. But the Most High had a plan, and the Most High was with him while he was in there. Still, don't nobody want to be in prison, especially for something they didn't do. Verse 2, and behold, there came up out of the river. So this is the Pharaoh's dream. It says, Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And this river is the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine. Kine is a type of cow. And fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept again and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. Rank meaning fat and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. Here's one of the first time that the east wind is mentioned. And typically, whenever the scriptures mention the east wind, nothing good is happening. So the east wind brings destruction, basically. And again, I know that because I've read it, but I'm just pointing it out to you so you can make note and just pay attention to the east wind being mentioned. And then as we move forward through the book, pay attention to the east wind and what the circumstances are surrounding this east wind. All right, verse 7. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. See, they don't have the interpretation. And folks dream and they can tell you the dream, but can they tell you what it means? That's the gift that Joseph had. Verse 9. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So Joseph given credit where credit is due. Remember when he was dealing with the baker and butler, he told them, he's like, does not the interpretation belong to God? He didn't say, I can do it. He said, hey, the interpretation belonged to the Most High. Tell me your dream. And so here again with Pharaoh, Pharaoh is like, we heard that you can interpret in dreams. And he said, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. To God goes the glory. Verse 17. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood up on the bank of the river, and that river is the Nile. And the word for the Nile in this story here is Yeor. Everywhere they talking about the river, it's Yeor. That's Nile. It's not the Yam Suf, like a lot of these people be trying to say. Yam Suf is the Red Sea, or Sea of Reed, or Sea of Rushing Water, sea of Rushing. So that's something I'm throwing in there right now. I know you don't understand, but just remember, if you look up the Hebrew word here for river, It's Yeor. It's not Yam Suf. All through this Joseph story, that's going to be important later when we get to Moses in the Exodus. All right, here we go. Verse 18, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine cows, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke, and I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind. See, the east wind blasted them. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. So the magicians didn't have this power, because there's already some wicked cats out there doing, witchcraft and trying to conjure up stuff. And they do have a certain degree of power, but they don't have what the Most High got. Joseph had it. Verse 25. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God has showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. So he had 2 dreams. And he told Pharaoh the dream is one. And we're going to read in the book that 2 witnesses establish a matter. And this is where that principle starts. This is the law first mentioned about it takes 2 witnesses to establish a matter. And it starts right here. Verse 26 says, this is Joseph interpreting. Let me just start at 25 again. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. He's talking about 2 different things in both of the dreams. He's saying these both mean the same thing. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kind that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showed unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God. Remember, 2 witnesses establish a matter. He's telling him, we have verse 32, and it says, and for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Now, and so he gave him the interpretation of the dream. Now he's given him the remedy, what he should do. So the Most High gave Joseph the interpretation, how to interpret the dream and what it means. Now he's giving Pharaoh the solution, what he needs to do. Because what's happening is, at this time, Egypt is ruling like the land of Canaan too, where his dad and his brothers are still living, where Jacob and his 11 brothers are living. And the famine is going to hit that land too. And this is how he brings this famine is how he's going to use what he's going to use to bring our people into Egypt. And once we get into Egypt, they're going to put us in captivity. And that's how the Exodus happens, right? With Moses and all that. But notice what he's using, man, is food. From the very beginning, man, in Genesis chapter 2 or 3 with Adam and Eve, the fall of mankind, what happened in the beginning when death was brought on mankind, it dealt with food. They ate from the knowledge of good and evil, and they wasn't supposed to. And we've read about famines a few times up until this point. So food, the Most High used food. He uses food throughout the book to make things happen. So even in Pharaoh's dream, right, it was about food. Cattle, they was fat or skinny, and then he was talking about corn. And so now Joseph is telling him the interpretation of his dream, and now he's going to tell him what to do. So I just wanted to do a quick sidebar to pay attention to how the Most High uses food to move things and to make things happen throughout this book, okay? We just got to pay attention to that. And we already, like we said, back in the Garden of Eden, he told them what to eat and what not to eat. And our people ate it. Adam and Eve ate it. Death was brought on mankind. So he destroyed the world with Noah and the boat and the water, the flood. They put food. And in the Garden of Eden, he told them what to eat too. He told them what was food. Just pay attention to food. I don't want to drag this out too much. Just pay attention to how food is used, how the Most High uses food or a lack thereof, like with a famine, to make different stuff happen, to move people around, because he's got a plan, and it's like he's playing chess, moving pieces into place to bring his plan into being, to bring his plan to pass. So just be aware of that. Let's just start at 33. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. He's given him the solution, what he needs to do to solve this problem that's coming. Verse 34, let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint officers over the land and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come and lay it up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed you all this, there is none so discreet and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and according unto your word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. His brother just went from the projects to the penthouse. He just went from prison to the top of the government in one day with the Most High. But he had to put in that he had to pay a price of 2 years in prison. But he was solid in prison. His character was solid. It was solid character that got him put in prison. He wouldn't sleep with Potiphar's wife. He wouldn't sin against the Most High by sleeping with another man's wife and committing adultery. And that got him 2 years, a 2-year bid in prison, and he was solid in prison. His gift put him amongst kings. His gift, to dream and be an interpreter of dreams. Man, it's just a beautiful thing. And God throughout the book tend to put his people around rulers and kings. And I'm reading in the book of Esther and Nehemiah. You read Ezra, Nehemiah. I'm in the book of Esther right now. They all in government up touching the king. The Most High seemed to put his people in high places to make stuff happen. Let's continue on. Verse 42. I want to read 41 again because it does something for me. It says, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. You notice how brothers like gold chains, right? Kings wore gold chains, and a lot of our people like to put on gold chains. This is one example showing you that, royalty tended to have gold chains. He gave his ring to Joseph. Back then, when they wrote letters, and they would seal the letters with clay or wax, and they would heat up the wax, seal the letter, and then they would press the ring in it, and that seal, everybody in the kingdom knew that seal, and that letter was coming from the king. The king gave that to Joseph, so Joseph can make anything move, anything except what was in the throne. All right, because Pharaoh was still on his throne. All right. So 43. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and he cried before him, bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you shall no man lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. He basically the man. Pharaoh, I'm gonna sit back and chill. You run everything, because I know the Spirit of God is in you. So the Most High was actually ruling Egypt at this time. through Joseph. Anyway, and these Egyptians would eventually be our enemies. Verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. So this is important. He's pointing out who the firstborn is, right? We got to remember that. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God, he said, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. So Manasseh's name should mean something like that. Verse 52. And the name of the second called he Ephor, God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. That basically is the meaning of his name. 53. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth or famine began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth or the famine was in all lands. See, it was in all lands. But in all the land of Egypt, there was bread, there was food, because Joseph had put it up. He had saved it and stored it up. Verse 55. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he said to you, do. Just like that, hey. Go holler at Joseph. Whatever he say, do it. Verse 56. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came unto Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because the famine was sore in all lands. Well, the land of Canaan, where Joseph's father and his brothers was living, was just north of Egypt. So if it was in all lands, you know the famine was also where they was living. And we know the story. That's why they had to come to Egypt to get some food. That is that.